Now we'll have keynote speech number 3. Mr. Masakazu Kita, Chief Investment Officer, Japan Science and Technology Agency, will give a presentation on key investment principles of the University Fund. Mr. Kita, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, thank you very much. My name is Kita, and I am the Chief Investment Officer at the Japan Science and Technology Agency. Nice to meet you. I started working at JST in June of last year, and I am in charge of the University Fund. Prior to that, I worked for the Norin Shukin Bank for about 30 years, of which 20 years were spent in allocation and asset allocation planning. But I also have experience in alternatives, global government bonds, equities, global credit, and some middle management. Regarding the latest news, there is the issue of interest rate hikes in the US. Today, the situation in the Ukraine has also become unstable. It may be a rocky start, but I would like to devote myself to the management of this university fund, which is a very important national strategy, and I look forward to working with you. Today, I would like to use the information, but since it is difficult for me to say a few words at this time, I would like to focus on the aim of the establishment and the mechanism. Lastly, since we have been invited by FinCity Tokyo, I would like to share with you our thoughts on our involvement with emerging managers. Alright, page 2. I will give an overview in Japanese, but I have prepared the information in English. First of all, as an overview, I would like to explain the aim of establishing this fund, which is the background on the top. It is about Japan's research power, meaning the number of theses. It says decline. Let me explain. The number of top 10 papers is sometimes used as a KPI, key performance indicator, and if we compare the number of frequently read papers, Japan was ranked 4th after the United States, China, and the United Kingdom from 1996 to 1998. However, in 2016 to 2018, the number dropped to 11th place, and in the most recent survey, it has dropped again. As mentioned in the second point, the number of PhD students is decreasing, which is due to the instability of job positions. And then there is the business income. The gap between us and the world's top universities continues to widen. With this problem in mind, we are working to strengthen our research infrastructure to a different level, from both the financial and institutional perspectives, in order to become a world's leading research university. Then, there is the implementation of institutional reforms. In this context, the University Fund will provide support from the financing side. As you can see in the basic framework, we are not setting up a particular fund, but using the Japan Science and Technology Agency. We will set up an administrative arm here as a funding agency to support research and development. Then, we will utilize the investment income in long-term stable investments for future research foundations. Universities need to reinvent themselves to be worthy of top research universities and commit to contribute funds. The planned duration is 50 years. Look at the scheme. First, the University Fund is at the center. This is within JST, and the starting point is the government above. They will provide 10 trillion yen altogether. At the beginning, 5.1 trillion yen, and as the government grants increase, JST will be managing the supporting funding of 10 trillion yen. We will manage these funds ourselves, but as you can see to the left of JST, we outsource the management of these funds to an asset management organization to earn investment income. If you look at the red arrow, you can see that the funds are allocated to the research universities below. So, the private sector's contribution to the project is on the right side. But there is no specific starting point. However, we do envision that the JST itself will issue agency bonds as one way of gathering funds. First of all, I would like to talk about the university. Please look at this page. I would like to explain a little about the situation at universities. First of all, let's take a look at the employment status of researchers at national universities. The number of limited-term employment is increasing, and the number of permanent employment is decreasing. Also, on the left side, the number of stable posts of young researchers is decreasing. As a result, the percentage of students entering doctoral programs has been halved, from 17% in 2000 to 8% in 2018. Then, there is the low level of business income. It is titled as the low growth of university income. There are many universities listed here. Take an example of the University of Oxford. Its revenue grew 2.2 times from 2005 to 2019. But the University of Tokyo's revenue grew less than 1.2 times, which means that the revenue that forms the basis of research and development is not growing. And on page 6, the scale of funds, which is the scale of managing funds. For example, Harvard's fund size is 4.5 trillion yen, while Keio's is 73 billion yen, Waseda is 30 billion yen, and the University of Tokyo is 15 billion yen. The scale of these investments in the income at universities such as Harvard, Yale, and Stanford is large, but low in Japanese universities in comparison. So the key point is the management part. Next, page 7. It shows the decision by the government to establish a university fund of 10 trillion yen. We will use the profits from the investment to realize a university that can conduct research and development at a level comparable to that of the rest of the world. On the next page, you will see the framework. First, the period of the university fund is 50 years, and then the participating universities will reform the university system and structures to become worthy as world-class research universities. Separate from fund management, the Cabinet is talking about certification of excellent international universities. One idea is building an independent and responsible governance system. They are discussing how to create the decision-making body, the head of the university, the provosts, who are the senior academic administrators, and the CFO, who is in charge of financial strategy. Another point is to build a system that can produce internationally outstanding research results, which means building a foundation for research. The third point is to develop a highly effective and ambitious business growth strategy. We are discussing a number of universities that have laid out their plans and were approved. They will receive grants from the university fund. Next page, please. The first step is to start with 5.1 trillion yen. This 5.1 trillion yen will be coming in right now during the current fiscal year. The final plan is to create a fund of 10 trillion yen by the next fiscal year. And this is something that is being studied carefully by the Kishida administration. So, here we are on page 10. The target return is a long-term payout of 3%, and the long-term inflation is assumed to be 1.38%. In any case, after we get on stable operations, we will keep at this substantive 3% long-term spending annually. Next page, please. The management method is based on the investment theory, which basically means long-term diversification, long-term investment, diversified investment, and global investment without domestic bias about our country to increase returns. In addition, we will implement rebalancing based on the basic portfolio, emphasizing discipline and avoiding excessive shrinkage, even during an adverse market environment. Another point is that one of the pillars of the project is to achieve the profit of 300 billion yen, 3% of 10 trillion yen, as soon as possible within the first 5 years of operation. Next page, please. The key points of governance are as follows. One is the Investment Advisory Committee, which I will explain later. In addition, we are currently recruiting excellent professional managers with specialized knowledge through recruitment activities and secondment from financial institutions. As a matter of course, we will be strengthening our risk management. This is page 13. Yes, this page contains the governance structure for fund management, including the Investment Advisory Committee. At the top of the chart, there is the Investment Advisory Committee, which is the executive committee of JST under myself, which is responsible for monitoring the management under the director in charge of internal control for risk management. In addition, we will strengthen the function of the first, second, and third lines. The term of office of the committee is 2 years, and its members are listed on the next page. Mr. Hiroshi Nakaso is the chairman, who is also a member of this FinCity Tokyo. Mr. Usuki, a professor at Nagoya City University, and Ms. Hisae Sato, a director of ICU. This person was the CIO of Nissan. Then, from the perspective of compliance and governance, Mr. Maruyama of PwC. Yes, then there is another person from Harvard Hughes Medical Institute, which is a healthcare-related research and development organization. And they also have an endowment fund. We are going to have global discussions with Ms. Landis Zimmerman, who has been the CIO there for a long time until last year. This is page 15. Yes, this is the asset liability structure, which is very simple, but for the assets, the final figure is 87 billion. But if you look at the financing structure, the government investment is 1.1 trillion yen, and this will come in March during this fiscal year. The FILP fund, the so-called borrowing from the Ministry of Finance, is 8.9 trillion yen, or $77 billion. This means that the capital ratio at the starting point will be 11%. I will explain later, but the FILP fund is a relatively super long loan, with a maturity of 40 years after 20 years of deferment. It has no roll risk, but it is a liability. On the other hand, the reference portfolio, which I will explain later, has a risk of 17% at 1 sigma, which means that we are going to build our portfolio with this level of capital in mind until it matures. This is the next page. This is a concept. First of all, on the left side, I mentioned the reference portfolio, which is composed of 35% global bonds and 65% global stocks. But it is not necessary to make it exactly as shown. The policy portfolio is shown in the middle. On the right side of it as a risk tolerance for the risk of this portfolio. From a medium to long-term perspective, we will examine the combination of portfolios that will maximize the return on the given risk. I was thinking of including alternatives to some extent in this, and when it comes to adding alternatives, I assume that it will take 7 to 10 years for this basic portfolio to be completed. The actual portfolio will be further subdivided. And we will also consider the transition plan for the startup phase. due to the capital situation and the fact that the inclusion of alternatives will not be immediate from day one. Page 17 is about the organization. Basically, the new organization will have 30 or more people, and I am on the top. There are 2 fund management offices and the investment coordination office. The investment specialists are on the left. So, there are some units here, but the main ones are investment strategy, asset allocation, and listed equity, these 2 traditional asset groups. Then there are alternative groups such as private equity, real estate, and infrastructure. Those investment strategy, traditional assets, and alternative groups are the major groups. Currently, we are in the process of preparing the system by hiring and seconding employees, and we expect to have at least the head of each department, including the head of the operation office, in place by March. Yes, and then on page 18 is the basic policy, which describes how JST will manage the funds, which can be found on the JST University Fund website. There are many documents, but I've attached them here as an introduction. I'm not going to explain this one, but there is one point which is on the next page. Yes, on the next page. Roman numerals 3, part 2, number 2. Describe the allowable deviations of the basic portfolio. But the basic portfolio will be decided after deliberation by the Investment Monitoring Committee mentioned earlier. And as I mentioned earlier, the basic portfolio is a portfolio like the North Star during the startup period, and it will take a long time to reach that point. I think that the paths up to that point will be sparse, so the basic portfolio will not be disclosed during the startup period. But it is assumed that the asset composition ratio will be announced in the business overview report every year. This is all about the university fund. So for me personally, it is an opportunity to go from the Norinchukin Bank, which is dedicated to the development of primary industries, to the promotion of academia, and to do so within the same organization. We are able to generate investment income that contributes to this, and I feel that this is a rewarding aspect of our work, and I feel the joy of being involved in national policy. In this context, with regard to the progress being discussed for emerging managers, we ourselves are in a position to make alternative investments over a long span of time, as well as to act as fund managers and discretionary investors. In this case, we need to find excellent managers as soon as possible to maintain investment capacity, and also select new managers who can contribute to the fund's return, particularly in the case of alternatives. Some managers are becoming more and more mature, and their strategies and methods are becoming commoditized to some extent. It is important to find managers who can implement new strategies. Therefore, by upgrading our own funds, we would like to contribute to the upgrading of the financial market in Tokyo. Okay, that's all I have to say. We are just starting out, and we are a newborn baby that needs to catch up with other public institutions, pension funds, university funds, and so on. Therefore, I think it is my mission to start from there. Establish a JST-specific development as soon as possible, and to show to everyone as much as possible. So, I would like to ask you for your support. That's all.